For this wonderful session. I think it has stirred quite a few thoughts expectedly in us in terms of trying to balance the whole thing. Thanks a lot, Mr. Vijayendran, Mr. Vivek, and Dr. Sandeep for your comments, and to put things in perspective. I mean, just before the start of this program, I was attending my daughter's investiture ceremony function, and what an investiture ceremony is, for the benefit of everybody, it's nothing but the students' council is elected every year, and there are various, the head boy, the head girl, the captains, the cultural secretary, the tech secretary. They've also started having a creative and a digital secretary in the latest council, and it was amazing to see the kind of confidence that the young minds have. I mean, the kind of clarity that they bring onto the board. Many of us, even today, after decades of experience, probably fall short in terms of where we are trying to look at things and what we are trying to do. Some of the highlights that I heard today was on what it means to be having a clear mindset, what it means to be having an open mindset, what it means to have a decision-oriented mindset. I mean, these terms coming in from 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, I think probably shake up what our thinking is all about. And I think today, what's been the attempt to really, put across as a team is to really try and see how this new normal can be managed better, how this new normal becomes a part of, our normal, and rather calling it the new normal, the next normal. We could have various parlances to really try and see how this fits in, but that's where it is. I mean, coming to what I think, I think Mr. Vijayendran's session brought about today for me. I've made a lot of notes. I mean, I've got my notes completely filled up, which is extremely important, because these are pearls that come in from experience. These are pearls that come in from wisdom. I must tell you, experience a lot of people have, but wisdom comes in when you start applying those experiences and applications a lot more religiously. He touched upon a very interesting subject about job preference and house preference. I mean, this is something that we need to balance. And I could see some of the videos that were on when the whole session was going on. Gone are the days when we used to attend a program as serious as this, with people moving around, with disturbances on, with someone crying, and this is a part of our normal lives. How do you really manage your job preference and manage the house preference at the same time is going to be quite a tricky part, because the tomorrow is uncertain. As he says, the light of the tunnel that you see at the end, one doesn't know when it is going to come, but there is light. There is light for sure. And the more opportunistic you are, the more optimist you are, you will probably start seeing things a lot more closer than they are. Just remember the sign on your rearview mirror that tells you objects are a lot more closer than they actually are. Another interesting aspect that he picked up on is the immense media consumption. There's been a plethora of it, and I would say in this digital era that I keep telling. I mean, I know that I have also on board here in this session who's a very strong proponent of digital. For me, the digital era and the digital deluge has got two key components. One, we must start improving the digital literacy. We need to start picking up What do we need to know about digital? How much do I need to be present in digital? At what extent do I need to spread out my digital campaigns? Is something to be rather being literate rather than just go all out. And the second is, when you are more digitally literate, I think you'll be more digitally responsible. If you can really bring about this digital era in these two takeaways of being more digitally literate and being more digitally responsible, I think you will start saving tons of money and reaching out to the right kind of customer audiences, which the other speakers very, very beautifully wove into their presentations. I love the Ogilvy fallback. I mean, I think that's an amazing thing, sir. Three things. What we today very popularly call the VUCA world, Ogilvy decades ago brought about it in a very, very beautiful concept: strategic relevance, unexpectedness. Probably we didn't know the word called unprecedented then. We didn't know the word called volatile then. We called it unexpectedness. You might even want to add an unpreparedness. We often tend to have the notion of knowing it all. And of course, the creative hallmark. I mean, it is always relevant and very, very paying to be very creative in the way you do the same thing. The popular adage that goes, old wine in a new bottle, keep doing it. And that's what he came back to. I mean, he came back to his days when, as his grandmother, probably they've been the best finance managers that we could have ever seen in the world. I mean, our parents, our mothers, couldn't have been a better finance manager. Today I was just buying vegetables down, and I was telling the guy that give me half kilo of this, quarter kilo of this. That guy would rattle out and he, instead of giving a half kilo, he gave a 600 gram. He was able to give you that right value of money in a fraction of a second. I mean, you would here sit with Excel sheets, you would have the latest SAPs and HANAs to have resource planning, and these guys sitting in a Kirana store knew what SAP management is all about without that plan software. And that's what we need to understand. Go back to the times. And that brings me to a little question here. Okay, I'm going to get a little quiz mood on. I mean, the question that I'm going to ask you is going to be, you can just type in your chat box yes or no. Would you rather have been without this experience of COVID? Would you rather have been wiser without this experience of COVID? Can I have a yes and a no from the audiences here? Okay, we have Harun, no. Okay, Vijay Raghavan is a yes. Cherian, ICS, no. Satish Pandey, no. Ramesh Durai, yes. Okay. Shalini Sri Lekha, okay, there's been quite a few. Aishwarya Lad, okay. So I mean, I think it goes to tell you that it's a very overwhelming no. There are a few yeses. They have their reasons to say yes, but yes, the overwhelming response across even a research carried out by the Harvard Business Review has been an emphatic no. So what does it mean to us? What's been the paradox of this crisis? If you have to look at the numbers, our business has been set back by years. I mean, some would say months, some would say a couple of years. Probably the automobile or the aviation industry would say probably 5 years. The tourism would say 5 years. Probably the healthcare would say a few months back, a few quarters back. Culturally, we've been catapulted ahead to a future that we wouldn't have imagined. We would have been strategically, our transformation has gained the momentum that in normal course we wouldn't have ever done it. And that's the kind of bandwidth that we are actually trying to talk about. So for me, really brought about the financial prudence of the yesteryears that Mr. Vijayendran brought it very rightly. We've learned to be a lot more prudent. I was talking to an L&D specialist yesterday, and I was just trying to tell him that, earlier, if I would have been very happy living the month with a lakh of rupee as a normal expense, probably COVID has taught us to live with 50,000 a lot more peacefully in the confines of our house. So we've learned to believe that less is even more. There've been a lot of focus on brands and activities, bigger the better. I think the larger ones will have lesser shocks. The smaller ones will have multiple shocks. I think this is something that has been very true. He raised a point of customers to have a holistic engagement, and I think that was wonderfully brought in by Dr. Sandeep towards the end of his presentation. Vivek, sir, I would still want to call you sir. I think you redefine what new normal is. Everything that we do new is a new normal for us. Right from the bicycle days to the Lambretta. I do not know how many of us here in this group, the youth, wouldn't have even seen a Lambretta other than the Google images. We've been having the pleasure of riding a Lambretta, and we know the power of that Lambretta. You redefined the pillion rider, and I think all of us are pillion riders to many people with us. We are pillion riders to a lot of people who look up to us. Let's be a responsible pillion rider. Let's really usher them and facilitate their journey to greater success. We are social animals, and I think he had a very heartfelt appeal that the new normal at work that is there today will probably see a different phenomena in terms of a little more advanced social animal that we will be. But yes, let's not forget the empathy, let's not forget the emotion. As we talk, frontliners, I think, are extremely important for us in business. So at work, the new normal should be how can we touch on their anxiety? How can we really manage a lot of their anxiety that people have at work? And I love the first point of contact, which is the frontliner. For me, they make the first impressions, and most often for all of us, they have the last impressions on the customer that we need to really keep in mind with. The three block, I think, was a wonderful way to really showcase the way we should really carry forward. Dr. Sandeep, I think, beautifully brought about what we very popularly know the last few months about the BC and the AC, the before Corona and the after Corona. And in all probabilities, it's how we really look at things. Brands, the bigger, the better. Portfolios, the leaner, the better. Keep revisiting your portfolios. This is the right time to keep doing it, because if you had a time before and you didn't do it, now you have no other option but to really revisit, relook at your SKUs that are languishing in the lower side, which are really adding on to inventory costs, which are really adding on to production costs, which is really adding on to the returns that keep coming whenever there is an exodus of people or whenever there's a change of strategy on account of a change of leadership. Keep revisiting that on a normal basis. Very nicely. I love the way Dr. Sani brought about the people, the doctor, and the communication aspect. I mean, it really talks about the chronic or the episodic brands on how you would manage them. We know that chronicity is somewhere where you can have a lot of localized impact, but as your portfolio starts getting more acute or more episodic, start increasing your number of doctors writing your brand, start increasing the number of people who can be connected to write your brands, because that's the only way you can really stay relevant and stay alive in these kind of torrid times. Differentiated brands, can we do that? I mean, look at beyond. I mean, I go back to what I really had this session all about a few weeks back on creating differentiation. Think three times before you want to create that differentiation. People who are there from NMIMS, where I take the topic of new product launches, keep asking the question 10 times, why should you launch a new product? I mean, I would rather have the question on why a new product rather than launch a new product. Be very sure that you really have something that can spur the rep's excitement to go to a doctor. Because if the rep is not excited, trust me, your doctor is as good as closed chapter for that new product that you might actually launch. Digital or non, that is your choice. The format you want to choose to launch it. Focus on important doctors to protect. I mean, that quadrant at first looked a little overwhelming, Dr. Sandeep, but as you went through the quadrants, I think for people who've paid attention to the session, it's a very easy way to really look at it. The Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, very beautifully put up. And I love the way you really talk about how the patient journey flows inside. When a patient walks in, and this is something that people associated with me have been talking, when a patient walks in the clinic, the doctor looks at the diagnosis, the doctor decides on what molecule he needs to use, and the doctor decides on a brand. And all this happens in a fraction of seconds. And if your brand can really register that prescription, I think the rep has done his job. The marketer needs to influence that small little millisecond journey so beautifully well that you can actually get about it. Breaking the geo barriers with a digital onslaught. I think this is so beautifully put, Dr. Sandeep. I think you really put about on how you can move across, which class of doctors you can really leverage through the digital onslaught. I mean, extremely well. I think I love that focus on what you really brought about. Patient centricity. I've been another proponent of what you rightly put across. I am sometimes amazed at how marketing is still extremely in the medieval era. We love to take doctor feedbacks on new product launches. We love to take doctor feedbacks on campaigns. How much have we spent that same amount trying to understand what are the patient responses? How do you categorize patients? How long do patients use? And you very rightly put, patient counseling can be one of the biggest ROIs that one can actually have. And this is very relevant to chronic medications, or even today to subchronic medications. Because if you don't do patient counseling, we have seen doctors who change chronic medications purely because of a CRM initiative done by a company. So please don't rest on the laurels that patient chronicity, once a prescription earned, is a prescription forever. It is not. I'm sure Mr. Vijayendran will relay about the early days when Cipla used to market the inhalation therapy. We thought that a prescription earned is a prescription for life. Yes, probably in less competitive eras that works. But in today's competitive era where there are multiple brands, please don't rest on that laurel that if I've got a prescription for an anti-hypertensive medicine, it's going to be lifelong. It can change. So use a lot of patient-centric models to try and give that back pressure to a doctor, which can ensure that your products are really met. And I think this is what brings to me the point whenever you raised is, patients first and doctor next. I mean, if you want to look at a patient-centric model, it's patients first and doctor next. Like the famous Vinit Nair book that spoke about employees first and customers second. This is something that we might want to carry forward when you're talking of a pharma centric industry that is there. Now, while I open up the whole discussion to the panel, Kale, you can probably take this slide off, and let's just get all the panelists on the screen. Let me start asking the first question. In terms of my question to Mr. Vijayendran is, what would be the culture of people that would expect to change in the coming days and months? How would you think that this culture of people will change in the coming days and months?
Yeah, Prashant, it will change dramatically, Prashant. We are going to embrace things which we have never tried in the past. And therefore, my first round of advice to all the people is never expect the near normal which you have been going through as a future normal. We are always besieged with a fear of the unknown. And now comes the opportunity to say, to live in a world where there is a fear of the unknown becomes the joy of the future, because you don't know what's going to come next and you're going to be caught by surprise. You've already been caught by surprise. There can't be anything worse than this. So this is the backdrop. We need to say every opportunity becomes an opportunity to learn. And the way Vivek keeps saying that I'm a lifelong student, learning never stops. So therefore, bring about a perspective that in every action that we do, we need to imbibe the concept of learning. That's point number one. Point number two is unless we find a solution to this, we have to live with the concept of the socialized distancing, the masking, and sanitization, as you call it. And in the socialized distancing comes about a cultural change that's going to take place, and that's where I would possibly try to challenge the existing norm. The concept of saturation is going to increase because of this. A clinic which had 100 patients yesterday will no longer have the luxury of having 100 patients. It's going to have the patient of 20, 25 patients, which means the balance 70 odd patients who need to get treated are not going to be waiting on the road, sitting outside with 6 feet distances. They are going to go to the second level, third level doctors. And that's where the concept of saturation will come to play. Many people in the industry are talking about, is this the time to get rid of, coverage, field force, lag, extra expenditure, and try to focus on a few set of core customers? And I would challenge that hypothesis and say, no, this is the time. You got to extend field force. You got to make sure coverage takes place. So the culture is, don't be scared to spend, which means invest today on trying to saturate tomorrow, and based on that saturation of tomorrow, spread your customers wide. And that's the new norm that we have to take. And this adaptation we should do in every walk of life. But to do this, there was a very important research which Sandeep threw up through to all of us. That's 18% of the customers give 90% of the business. And there is another 25% of the customers which he said, if at all you want to, don't neglect them. So, and as I see it today, 18% is where we are spending. So don't lose the balance 25. Fine, 57 we should keep aside because we should not be wasting expenditure at the time when times are difficult, but don't miss the 25. So the culture has to be, let's bring about the 40-50% of the base in the industry as a critical value driver for the business. Don't be scared of the new opportunities that are going to come. Don't be scared of new things that you're going to try, because you're going to fail. And in that failure is going to be a teaching, a learning. And that learning is going to make sure that you propel your next level of likeliness to succeed in the days to come. So that's what I would recommend to people. Don't be scared of new things that will come your way. Adapt them and embrace them.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I think that was actually you did cover a part that I had planned to ask you next, is how to be brave, and that's where you nicely got that into the same loop. Don't be scared and keep working on this whole thing. Mr. Vivek, a question to you about the work from home, the work from anywhere has been a very popular jargon for the last many months, and today we've got quite used to the entire concept of working from home, or let's say working from anywhere. What in your understanding has been the impact of working from home, which has had on productivity and on creativity?
My suggestion to all the C-suite, we have to first remember that not everybody stays in South Delhi, not everybody stays in Defense Colony, or a Lokhandwala, or a Hiranandani, or a Thakur village. We have people living in 400 square meter houses. Instead of answering this question, let the audience answer. The audience, my suggestion to all of you, please close your eyes for a couple of minutes. Imagine you're at home in Mumbai, in Dahisar, in a 400 square feet house. You have a spouse who is also working. You have your parents at home, and you have 2 kids. At 10 o'clock in the morning, your boss has scheduled a Zoom meeting with you and his team. And at the same time, at 10 o'clock, your spouse has also a Zoom meeting with a boss and a team. And at 10:15, your kids have an online learning program in the school. And the last of the 2 kids, they enter into a brawl. Just imagine the situation. And now try to answer this question. What impact has working from home on productivity and creativity? It's really amazing if people are able to work in this environment with a lot of productivity and creativity. And therefore, everyone is looking back to coming to office to work. Of course, you can find time when you're not disturbed, that is early in the morning from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. or maybe 6:30 a.m., which I call as the Brahma Muhurta. You have to wake up at 3:35, 3:40, get ready at 4 o'clock and work from 4 to 6 or 6:30. That's the time only when you will be really productive and creative, where you have no disturbances from anyone. But otherwise, working from home will definitely hinder your productivity and creativity. That is my take.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I think I love the creative part in the early morning, and that might be a slight challenge for a lot of us, but then that's an advice that will help you to be a lot more creative. So that's very interesting. My question to Dr. Sandeep, in this world where we are beginning to see a lot of digital movement happening, a lot of digital migration happening, various modes of digital mechanics being used. There have been a lot of creative remote access tools that people will have to engage with doctors. Would you see that this would make a important play in the way we manage doctors and thereby the resultant business? What is your take on these remote access tools?
So, what I'm going to say may not be very politically correct. It is not important which tool one uses. If I want to go from Churchgate to Andheri, my decision to go from Churchgate to Andheri is far more important than whether I go by taxi or by train or by bus. We have got, unfortunately, as an industry, highly caught up by the technology. In order to explain this, let me give you a 1-minute background. I think there is not a single person on this webinar today who has not made any calls along with medical reps. When you go into with a medical rep, just think back what happens. A medical rep knocks on the door of a doctor. He opens the door. The doctor recognizes him either by his name or by his company's name or by his product's name. He recognizes. There is a conversation that builds up. That conversation could focus on yesterday's football match, cricket match, Narendra Modi, Mamata Banerjee, any such topic can be there, but that conversation takes place. At some point during the conversation, the medical rep's hand goes into his bag and either some paper or some electronic gadget comes out of that bag. What happens to this conversation? As soon as this electronic gadget or paper comes out, the doctor stops talking, he folds his arms, leans back, and becomes a spectator. When you go to see a circus, you are not engaging with the clown. You are simply a spectator. This is what the doctor becomes. Again, at the end of this whole process, that electronic gadget or paper goes back into the bag. Again, conversation opens and two-way communication occurs. So tell me, has this piece of paper or electronic gadget improved communication or hampered communication? And if it has hampered communication, how many thousands of crores of rupees has this industry spent over the last so many years in order to hamper communication? Mr. Hattangadi spoke about a knowledge worker. He is well positioned to know that in this industry, our medical representatives were knowledge workers. In 1950s, they would write a letter to the doctor saying, I am coming to your town on so-and-so date. I will be staying in Circuit House. You can see me with an appointment. Why were doctors seeing medical reps by appointment? Because they were knowledge workers. Today, we as managers and directors and CEOs have converted that knowledge profession into, if I use a very unparliamentary word, a request and begging profession. This is our failure. It is not the medical rep's failure at all. We have converted him into a position where he has lost his dignity. So I would not say whether the remote access tools are good or bad. It is what we do with that remote access tool that is good or bad.
Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. I mean, I like the entire concept of what happens when very typically we open up our so-called aid inside the clinic, and then the role just changes into being an engaged spectator or being an engaged audience to merely a spectator, and that's what is something that we all need to together try and drive this. Kalai, I will don't show any slides on the screen. I will take up the questions that has come as a part of the registration process. I mean, a question to Mr. Vijayendran that came up from one of our people during registrations is, from Nitesh Gupta. I mean, he's been quite an active person. What are the possible expectation changes that would happen in doctors' minds in the industry, maybe from a little longer horizon, from the next 2 to 3 years? What would you see the changes that would come up in the doctors' expectations?
Okay. Nitish, that's pretty interesting. Can you just take reference? Somebody has to mute their
Yeah,
speaker.
can I request everybody else to mute their microphones? It'll just help us. Thank you. Yeah, please. Thank you so much.
Just yesterday, I was privy to market research done by SMSRC in conjunction with Purdue University. And this has come through in less than 5 months of time. And already the customers are saying 53 to 55% of the doctors would prefer to have a one-on-one meeting with the rep as compared to a digital forum. That's point number one. Point number two, about 20% of the people are okay with the digital medium, and another 23-24% are comfortable with the phygital medium, which is either physical or digital. And that's where I'd like to borrow the examples given by both Sandeep and Vivek, which very categorically mentions that I have to be omnipresent at the clinic to drive home that comfort to the customer that I'm interfacing with an organization and I'm drawing benefit out of it, which means I need to be strategically correct, I need to be well trained, I need to be groomed well, I need to communicate well, I need to know my products well, I need to understand what the customer needs. The three fundamentals which Sandeep was very clearly mentioning, how many doctors write my product, which brands do they write, which molecule. These are fundamental basics. And till the times come, I keep telling this to people, any business which has a human interface in communicating product benefits to a customer, as the case might be in the case of pharmaceuticals, it is preeminent that the rep will play a very critical role, or an organization person will play a critical role, whether it's a marketing person, whether it's a chief executive officer, whether it's a director, whether it's a rep, whoever, it doesn't matter. Which means you need to be engaged in understanding your business, your products, your customers comprehensively. So don't lose that interface or physical knowledge with the customer, which means you need to be trained well, you need to be groomed well, you need to understand your markets, your customers pretty well. So what you were masters at till yesterday, go back to those basics and rebuild on them. Now is an opportunity possibly to remove the trash away from the system and bring back the glory of the yesteryears, which people are talking about, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to have, I recall this, I used to be a rep and I used to visit in a very 100 kilometers away from Bombay is a market called Dahanu. And I used to have the Mission Hospital there. And I used to have a doctor called Dr. Grace John, who's there, Dr. Mekwan there. When I used to go and meet those customers used to be delighted to spend half an hour, 45 minutes. They used to wait for us. We used to have breakfast together, finish the business and go. And that business was not because we were going and meeting them. That business was because we were going and giving a comprehensive idea about what products we are coming out with, what new. I still recall the days. We were the first company to have launched betadine lotion.
Okay.
And we were talking about povidone, iodine, taking care of bacteria, fungus, protozoals, yeast, and viruses. And Dr. Mekwan was a surgeon, and he said, Vijayendran, I want to use betadine lotion as the starting point of preparing my patient. And today, every surgeon in the country uses it. And that would not have happened had it not been the case where the yesteryear communication of demonstrating what the product is, communicating what the product is, explaining what the product is, taking a reference and explaining in detail what has gone through. So we have to be sure to bring that value add to the customer. Now, if you don't bring that value add to the customer, it will not help. And I keep telling this to every employee in the organization, in whichever company that I work. Every role in an organization exists only because that role cannot be performed by somebody else. If that role cannot be performed by somebody else, you need to understand what is the unique individual contribution that role does to the job. If you're able to answer this, your job is always secure, your job is always in demand. So my advice to everybody is, in the future, identify your unique individual contribution to the job that you do, to the purpose that you exist, and that is where your value add will happen at the customer level.
Perfect. Beautifully put up. I think. I mean, you raised that issue about how, I think you gave another live example of what you wrote in the slide about a holistic customer engagement, and I think that's where your early days of Mission Hospital and why doctors, wrote for you is not only because you visit them. I mean, yes, I think, we've got a lot of people today. If a rep or a manager says that I visit the doctor 20 times in a year or in a couple of years, and the doctor has to write for me, there is no guarantee that he has to write for you. But what is the kind of value that you bring to the table in terms of a differentiation is what can probably clinch that deal for you. Thank you so much on that. There's a question to Mr. Vivek, and this is a very interesting question from a student of Jamia Hamdard, Tanya Srivastav. What could be the key things a fresher needs to keep in mind for gaining a competitive advantage in this current pharmaceutical industry and become a capable marketeer? I mean, that I thought was an interesting question, Tanya. This is straight to you, Mr. Vivek, who really believes this as a frontline, I think, proponent.
My response would be dump pharma mindset. I need to really dump the pharma mindset into the Arabian Sea, which is now, in full swing in the Bombay monsoons. And we have to adopt the mindsets of the other industry. Today, we are like a frog in the well. And for the frog, only the well is the entire world. We need to come out of jump out of the well and see what the whole world is about. I need to see what the people what the brand managers in the FMCD and the FMCG are doing. And unless I do that, we'll continue to have that old hackneyed model of pharma marketing promotion. See the beautiful way in which Lifebuoy liquid soap was built. I can never forget that example. I think his name was Sri Rup Mitra. Yeah. He carried out a study. At that time, I think Lifebuoy liquid hand soap was just launched, and Dettol liquid hand soap was the brand leader. And Dettol liquid hand soap, because of its rub-out effect on the mother brand, Dettol antiseptic, they had a lot of advantage over Lifebuoy. So Sri Rup Mitra, the then brand manager, and I think is some vice president or something, but is having a much higher position. He carried out an interview with the actual users of Dettol, and he gained a lot of insight. And the insight which he gained had nothing to do with germs. Before the child digs into the favorite food, the mother tells him, "Kam se kam 1 minute ke liye haath dhona." And there he got that insight, and along with the F&D, they developed a product which could destroy germs in less than 10 seconds. And then they came out with a beautiful advertisement. You see a bubbly young boy from 8 to 10 washing his hands, and the boy is saying, "Mummy कहती है, कम से कम 1 minute तक हाथ धोना चाहिए." And all the other friends, they sneer at him and ridicule him. बंटी तेरा साबु slow है क्या? These are some of the things which we in the pharma should do. Do we ever have humor in our uh, promotional material? I have not seen any. The poor doctor, he has to see patients with a glum face and an equally glum-faced medical representative rattling out what the brand manager taught him without any emotion, without any feelings. Where can we see that differentiation? Therefore, my friends, Tanya, please develop a FMCG mindset, and all the other listeners who are listening to me, dump that pharma mindset.
Good, an interesting takeaway. I mean, I think you seem to have got another new normal here, which is on trying to dump the mindset. But I think the message is look outside the industry and don't stay conventional. I mean, there are a lot of things that's happening around which can inspire you, which can trigger a new sense of creativity. Try and adopt to see if it fits into the scheme of pharma things. And I've been a very strong proponent of piloting things. And if you can keep piloting these small things, it can really take a question to Dr. Sandeep from Jitesh Bajaj. How do you look at the evolution of the pure digital reps in the coming days, like we see in some international markets? What are the ways that companies can look to get there purely with a mindset of trying to scale up operations? You're on mute, Dr. Sandeep.
Hi, Jitesh, and thank you for this question. The issue of a digital rep is an important one in the context of some of our foreign markets because their doctors and their environment places significant restriction on one-to-one face-to-face contact. In a country like Australia, for example, a medical rep is not allowed to meet a doctor more than 2 or 3 times in a year. So that has a different reason why a digital rep is able to still make contact with a doctor without having to go to a rep or to a doctor physically. From our context, unless those kinds of restrictions are put on our field forces, I think that will not be the reason why a rep will use primarily the digital channel. I think the ability to focus on in a conversation on a specific behavior change with a doctor will be the critical driver of a digital communication, because there is very little bandwidth and there is very little attention span when a doctor is listening to a rep in that space. To make it interesting, and for example, the example that Mr. Hattangadi gave in terms of building humor into a conversation, but more importantly, to be focused on the doctor's belief. So one size will not fit all. We will have to understand a doctor's beliefs and behaviors and segment the doctor population in a manner by which we can focusedly address key issues in that doctor's mind in our conversation. And this conversation will need to be done at a peer-to-peer level. This will not be the typical conversation that a rep has with a doctor today, where he goes down on his knees, puts the doctor up on a pedestal, and prays to him. It will be a scenario where a rep is a co-professional of the doctor and is in a position to challenge the doctor's beliefs and his attitudes towards various of his prescription behaviors in an effort to get the same kind of behavior change that is driven by evidence-based medicine. I give you another example. The brand Lipitor in the United States, they had so much content and so much market shaping to be done that at one point of time, Pfizer was employing 8 reps to meet one doctor. So the same doctor was met by 8 different medical representatives, each addressing Lipitor from a different perspective. So we can, and when I was talking about mirror teams, this is the probably the world champion of mirrors, where you have 8 mirror teams visiting a single doctor. But coming back to your question, Jitesh, about reps who are primarily using the digital channel, their ability and their training will need to be so high that they are in a position to truly influence behavior in a space of a very little time, very little attention span, and low bandwidth. This is not going to be easy and will require significant rethinking and reimagining of our entire Salesforce metrics. Salesforce effectiveness today is measuring calls. That's all that we actually measure. How many calls will a rep make on a doctor? That model will have to dramatically change as we go forward, because it will not be the number of calls that will make any difference at all. It has never made a difference in the past also, but that was the easy thing for us to measure, and therefore we were measuring that. But in the future, completely new kinds of Salesforce metrics will be required in order to drive a digital rep in achieving significant behavior change in his doctor customers.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I think that's wonderfully put, and I think Jitesh, the digital rep, especially for a lot of task force kind of an oriented mindset, can probably be the way to start with, the way to really pilot that and test that model. Rather than I think somebody who's really promoting the day-to-day prescription based products may not be a very safe or a very cost effective model. A question to
one additional point on this, Prashant, to take what Mr. Hattangadi said one step further. When we are looking outside our industry, FMCG is a good way to look at when we are talking at mass level. But on a one-to-one conversation, I would encourage everybody to look at top-notch medical device companies.
Absolutely.
And the way in which their reps engage with their doctors is the same way consultancy companies deal with their clients, where they are shaping behaviors through absolutely high level input. And doctors look forward to visits of medical device company salespersons, and whom they call sales engineers in many cases. These people really add value to the doctor's practice, and we have to get to some level like that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. A question which is a really piping hot question, and as this question came up, there was another announcement that came in. This question is from Anirudh Woody, and this is to Mr. Vijayendran. Amazon's official foray into e-pharmacy that came up yesterday, and I think today there was another announcement of GeoMart really talking about healthcare and pharmacies. How would this change the traditional channels going ahead in the COVID scenario? Would this digital buying behavior, how would today's pharma try and tackle this?
Actually, I would suggest today's pharma should embrace this. It should not tackle this. You ask yourself 10 years back, were you ready for the Amazons and the Flipkarts of the world? You're not. Today, you dare not go to a shop to buy a book. You do the book review on the web, you see it, you buy it, and it goes on. There are some teething issues related to online pharmacies today, which is, for example, Schedule H drugs, Schedule X drugs. What happens to repeat buying? these kind of questions from a policy perspective is being attended to right now as we speak. The IPA, the IDMA, and the OPPI are collectively putting their minds on trying to work around this. But you can't take away the fact that the online pharmacies are here to stay. You cannot tackle around with this. It will be here, it will grow in stature, and it will do well as time progresses. While they are disruptive in nature, no doubt, where you have to be very cautious is you don't have a one-on-one interface to understand which organizations mean what to a customer, because the normal pharmacist is the gateway to the normal patient to understand the credibility of organizations that sell medicines today. A patient goes, and I've seen him asking, how good is Becosules? He says, Pfizer, multinational company, aap jante nahi hai, bada acha dawa hai. So he walks away. The same thing, he goes and he gets some XYZ pharmaceuticals. He might say, sir, maine suna nahi hai. So the pharmacist is the gateway to knowledge enhancement of the patient. And that's where the concept of patient centricity comes to play. But organizations do not have the flexibility to reach directly to them unless and until they have PR exercises to talk about their organizations. Therefore, online pharmacies, to me, as I understand, is not something that you have to tackle. You have to embrace them. You got to find means and methods to reach out to them. Discounting as a way of a norm or not is got to be decided by the organization's P&L strategy. And according to me, you got to be there. And that, to me, is going to be a very, very key value driver in the days to come to enhance business at the marketplace.
Very right. I mean, I think companies are already embracing this. We are really tying up with a lot of the e-pharmacies, not only to expand the reach of the products, but also to probably get better customer insight. So this is a wonderful mix of patient centricity as well as reaching out to a lot of people. Satish Pandey has a nice question to Mr. Vivek in terms of while you spoke a lot about, I think, the frontline people. Right. During COVID, companies have stepped up to hone the skills of their field executives and managers in all possible frontiers: product refresher, therapy refresher, skill enhancement, mindset enhancement. Apart from this, while the world is limping back to normalcy, would you suggest any further interventions that will help the field executives and managers who can adapt, adopt, and be adept to the new normal? So there's a lot of 3 A's here from Satish. Adapt, adopt, and adapt to the new normal. What else would you really recommend besides these interventions that can be put up?
Apart from all these interventions, treat them like humans. We talked about patient centricity, but we also must remember people centricity. And we cannot have patient centricity in a company which doesn't have human centricity. We need to treat our people like human beings. And once we treat them like human beings, once we really look at them with respect, I believe many of these problems would be addressed.
Lovely, lovely. I mean, I think you can't have a simpler answer to that. Okay, just a minute, please, while I hold on the battery. I'll have the next question asked. And this goes to Sandeep in terms of a question which is there. While we spoke about acute brands can come out of the current strategies and shine despite the industry trend. While we need to have the focus on chronic brands, this question is from G. Loja. While the focus to chronic brands has to be there, what if acute brands dominate a particular portfolio in a division? How could one really manage that aspect?
So, in a situation where acute brands dominate a portfolio, recognize that in the short run, while COVID is actually restricting patient footfalls in a doctor's chamber, the situation is very bad because doctors are not getting these patients. The same patient who was yesterday, getting a prescription of amoxicillin, clavulanic acid, or some kind of an infection, is no longer coming to see that doctor at the clinic or the hospital. And this is therefore a challenge. I would take this time if I had a pure, suppose I'm assuming the extreme scenario that my portfolio is 100% acute. In this scenario, I would definitely look at creating a better bind with my doctors in a manner that I build relationships such that as soon as this situation eases and patients come back to doctors, you will get the maximum return on this investment you have made in the interim period. There is no method that you have by which you will get patients to go to see a doctor in this COVID period. But you can create a situation where the share of patients you will get today and tomorrow as this situation eases will increase dramatically as you are looking at this situation. There is another constant thing that I would like you to look at, which is, I don't know what is the average price of your products, but if you have, for example, very expensive acute therapies, for example, therapy for hepatitis C or therapy for oncology, or all of which are acute therapies, or for immunocompromised patients. Here you can look at how you can engage patients and thereby be able to increase affordability of these patients through some kind of what are known as deferred payment programs or EMI kind of programs, which can significantly improve patient access through improved affordability. So in the acute space, for low-priced products, you need is essentially build rapport, build engagement, so that whatever little patients are coming in, you get a better share. But this share translates into significantly better business as the market eases and patients start coming back to doctors' chambers. But if you are dealing with very expensive acute brands, then helping patients on the subject of affordability in terms of managing their cash flows may be a good idea as well.
Okay, that's interesting, and I think that again gets back to that concept, Jeel, of the bigger you can get your brand, the better you insulate it from the shocks that can come from the episodic brands that are there. I'm going to stay with you, Dr. Sandeep, for a question that comes in from Arindam Majumdar. Is how far permission marketing will be playing a crucial role to make it easy connecting with doctors? I mean, this is something that can be quite a sensitive aspect with digital, and with the digital mechanics of reaching out on remote basis is going to be higher. How far will permission marketing play a crucial role? Maybe a comment from you.
Yeah, so I believe if we stress out the doctor any more than we already have, it will, become a matter of reality. And therefore, my advice to everybody would be, change your mindset. To use Mr. Hattangadi's phrase, dump the current mindset in the Arabian Sea, despite making it more polluted. Essentially, dump this mindset. Look at your patients as your customers. Look at your doctors as your partners. Therefore, partners do not engage in transactional relationships with each other. And as they do not engage in transactional relationships, you will build partnerships that doctors will find valuable. And then you will not need to worry about whether permission marketing is happening or not happening.
Absolutely. So I think stay digitally responsible, If you do that, I think, Arindam, a lot of the permission marketing will be automatically granted. And if you bring value to what you are really connecting with them, I'm sure they will really reconcile better. There are a few questions from ICS. I'll take in one that is there, which is a question to Mr. Vijayendran. Uh, and rightly so, it is good to be asking you this. Do you see any structural changes that can happen in the Indian pharma industry? Purely the level today from an MR to a CEO, you could have around close to eight to nine levels that are there. Are they redundant? Are they necessary in the new normal that we are going to speak about?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. It's not the levels of movement from one position to another from a CEO perspective that comes to play. From the traditional model, where one tended to believe that you have to be a medical rep to really understand what it is to interface with the customer and then move up the value chain, many people traditionally have moved up from there to become a CEO. But there are also instances where you could straight away come out from business school, be smart enough to understand the rules of the game, the way the hierarchies work, and have a kind of a snapshot exposure to each and every function and move up. That's what most owner-driven companies have inculcated or bought in their own kith and kin to get exposed to various places and reach the top. So I don't believe that it is necessary that you have to go through the 9, 10, 11, 12 levels to do it. But if you do it without any kind of backup support, you should spend about 2 to 3 years in each function, and about 20, 21 years you would be there. So which means typically at about 44, 45 years, you become a CEO, and then you have another 10, 15 years to run the business and make your presence felt in the industry. So any which way you look at it, you can spend the 9 levels, 2, 3 years, 4 years. If you're spending too much time, 3 to 4 years and beyond in a position, then please understand there is something structurally wrong in you grasping the essentials of the job or your ability to contribute to that job. So you've got to think, dig deeper, and find out what is going to happen. Coming back to the industry, my feeling is yes, the new norm, the 9 to 10 levels may not exist going forward. You may have a digital promotion which happens at the level of the customer. But if the new research order is true in a knowledge-based industry, an interface between the company and the customer becomes important to understand nuances of what happens to the product. It's going to become all the more relevant in the pharmaceutical industry going forward because India is now recognized to be following the TRIPS and the patent agreement, which means every new product that they're going to launch is going to be driven by a wealth of knowledge that needs to be given to the customer. Traditionally, you look at it, every company which has 20 years product life cycle will generate information about the product every year. Every year you will go with a new set of knowledge, new set of trials, new set of information, talk to the doctor gets reinforced about it and continues to write the product. So if this industry has to be guarded where information cannot be given to the patients directly, my own belief is the structure will be there to stay. In what form, I don't know. You can have a digital rep, you can have a digital district manager, you can have a digital regional manager, call it what you may want, but that levels might be there in the days to come. That's my take on this.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, I think that's been quite an interesting aspect. A question from Vijay Raghavan to Vivek sir is on what kind of SFE metrics that we today often know, and we keep really that as one of the markers of how controls in the field are. Are they redundant, and what kind of change you would really want to see to improve the predictability of the field visits? I mean, because the field visits are not in your control today. I think the days of 10 to 12 calls have dropped down to 6, 7. One has a question mark on the quality behind it, the kind of content of doctors that we meet. Where would you see these SFE metrics getting churned out?
I would like to ask a question before that. Are our field managers really looking at the software which is already available with them, are they able to really analyze from whatever data they get from online reporting? Today, we find that many, they're still not digitally intelligent to really analyze the data which we get from the mobile apps and turn it into an actionable area. To me, I may be wrong, but to me, whatever analytical data which we get today from the mobile reporting, that is good enough.
Prashant, I would like to add one line.
Please. After that, the next question, I'm putting you on a spot of bother on that.
So,
Please go ahead.
on SFE metrics, what are we all trying to drive? We are trying to drive sales per rep. That is what is productivity for our industry, and in any which way you calculate it. Sales per rep is equal to calls per rep multiplied by sales per call. That is the equation. If you look at the best rep of the industry and the worst rep of the industry, you will find no major difference in the calls per rep.
Yeah.
Somebody makes 8 calls, somebody makes 9 calls, somebody makes 10 calls. It is in that order of magnitude. The difference is in the sales per call. And sales per call is about the quality of that call, not the quantity of that call. In that area, I wanted to just therefore add to what Mr. Hattangadi just said. If you look at, I gave you the example of what happens when a rep goes and meets a doctor and how this spectator thing happens. Think of what happens when an area manager goes along with a rep. The activity of the area manager is between two extremes. Either he sits at the back, takes the latest copy of the India Today lying on the doctor's table and starts reading until the rep's discussion with the
comes.
Or he sits next to the doctor and takes the detail aid from the rep's hand and actually details the product. Now, this is these two ends of the spectrum. Why does this happen? Because the area manager thinks that it is his duty to make a good call. He does not realize that the maximum amount of number of calls he can make with a rep is 10% of the number of calls.
Yep.
90% of the calls the rep will make on his own. Making 10% good calls will not improve the business. Teaching that rep to make 90% good calls will desperately improve the business, which makes the role of that area manager a coach, not a great detailer. And the day the area manager understands that his role is that of a coach, he will sit and observe what the rep is doing. He will discuss before the call and after the call, what is our plan for this call, what happened actually in the call, what can we do better next time. And gradually that rep's performance and productivity will improve. His sales per call will improve. His sales per rep will improve. This is all SFE metrics are all about. It's not about what somebody fills in to some software.
True. So it's less of the quantity. This just brings me to a comment here to just, I think reiterate what you said. This uncanny ability of the manager to detail or pull the visual aid in front of the doctor from the rep, generally happens when there are, superiors along with him. Otherwise, I don't think he really bothers to even really support the guy and make sure that the 90% of the balance calls that he does in his absence is really true blue quality. And yes, I think the sales of a call will improve if you start adding more gray cells in the call. That's where the quality starts coming in. If you can apply a lot more of gray cells, I'm sure you will have better sales. post the call.
So when I used to manage business and sales in this country, in Aventis, I used to have a metric for my area managers. And that metric was how many cups of tea do you drink every day? Because before every call and after every call, if you are discussing the call with the rep, you are probably doing it over a cup of tea. So if you are drinking at least 10 cups of tea in the course of the day, then probably you are a good area manager.
True. That's a nice lighter way to look at it. I'm going to put in the last question, which is a coupling question of a few people. I know we are almost 3 hours since we began. This is a question that I'm coupling with Meher Sheikh as well as another senior gentleman, a veteran, Ravi Bhushan, on this call. And it's a practical question, and this is going to be coming to you, Dr. Sandeep. Is how is it possible to differentiate brands in such a cluttered Indian market? I mean, you've got the challenge of 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 brands vying for that single mind space of the doctor, or that single prescription power of the doctor. What would you want to leave this Q&A with what is your parting message on how to differentiate in this melee of products to a marketer or a sales manager, or there are people across the industry with various levels who've been here. What's that parting message that you would like to give?
So I'd like to divide my answer into two parts. My first part is, if you look at any molecule and you find there are 200 brands, you will find that 75% of the 200 brands business is done by 5 brands. And 195 brands share the balance 25% of the business. So that you have brands which have 15, 20, 30% share, and a plethora of brands who have 0 point something percent share. Why does the market differentiate between 5 brands and 195 brands? There is extremely few examples, if at all, where you will find that 80% of the business of that molecule is done by 100 brands. You will never find that. You will find 75, 80% of the business done by 5 brands, 6 brands, 7 brands. The market differentiates. And what you do in the marketplace differentiates you. Your product, the tablet, may not be differentiated. But what you are selling is not just the product. You are selling the product, its associated services, the way in which you deal with your doctors. Everything is part of your brand. And the market does differentiate between various situations. I give you not a very relevant example, but let's take the brand Allegra. Allegra was launched in 1998. In the same month that Allegra was launched, there were 5 more brands which were launched. By the end of the first quarter, there were 47 brands of that molecule. And by the end of the year, there were 150 brands of that molecule. Yet, that brand is 150 crores today. The next brand is 15 crores. So the market differentiates. It does not matter how many brands there are in the marketplace. If you do something differently, your market will differentiate. This is point number 1. Point number 2, if you do quadrant analysis, as I showed you, you will realize that in those 18% of doctors, you are probably market leader. And as the market leader, you will do differently. And you have been looked at differently by those 18%. Which is why they are giving you a disproportionate share of their prescriptions to you. And you build upon that and differentiate yourself from that population, expand that population, and your sales will keep growing. You don't have to differentiate globally.
Wonderful. I mean, I think thanks so much. Yeah. Yes, sir.
A small point to add so that everybody comes in line on one thought, and this is related to the productivity point which the panelists were also referring to. I worked in some of the best acute companies, chronic companies, and multinationals as well. And everywhere, this talk is always there. In a division, you have a productivity of 2 lakh rupees and you have a productivity of 25 lakh rupees. And you always have a division head, company CEO, everybody coming and saying, if somebody could do 25 lakhs, why don't you also do 25 lakhs? And there are case studies aplenty which make us go a little cautious on this route. Productivity is important. There's no two ways about it. But at the same time, if you make that as a genesis of your business existence, you will start seeing the wrong side of your business coming forward. You will start taking actions which drive people to say that you got to give, if he can do 10 lakhs, you should also do 10 lakhs. Those kind of things. I can take examples of the examples. And for example, in one of the companies where I was working, involved with some of the best antibiotics in the industry, there was a rep who was giving 18 lakh rupees productivity. And the whole company was gung-ho, gaga about it, saying that here is a rep who's giving 18 lakhs productivity. And therefore, they pushed 20 other reps in that state to say that if there's one guy who can do 18 lakhs, why can't you do it?
Correct.
And the whole SFE metrics, marketing metrics, everything started working towards making the balance 19 people work towards the 18 lakhs and improvement, logically so. Then came the bombshell that the 20 lakh guy left and joined another company. And that territory fell flat to 1 lakh. And nobody could say, what do you do with it? And everybody were analyzing, saying that, oh, there's a 20 lakhs. This is what he was doing. We should do this. We should do that. So I would go there with a bit of a caution and try and say the fundamental that I keep is every new customer that you add as an RX prescriber for your brand is a long-term productivity improvement for the company. So I will say that if you have 20 lakhs, fine. That's not enough for me. Every year, what is the number of new customers that you have added? You tell that to me first. Don't tell me how much prescriptions you have increased from the existing set of customers. That's history. There might have been 20 actions done by a company that has happened. So therefore, I come back to the saturation point in pharmaceutical industry, going forward with social distancing, etc., coming to play. And if that becomes a norm, saturation of a market is the first fundamental by which you start increasing your prescriber base. If your prescriber base is increased, your prescription outflow will work. And then all the measures of productivity we put into that and say, okay, let's now increase the quantum of prescriptions from a prescriber and improve the productivity. And that's a small point which I thought is important. I'm trying this out in the existing companies that we're doing. It's working wonders for us, and we're quite happy with it and quite glad with it.
Absolutely. I think incrementalism is what you really put forth, whether it's customers or prescribers. Wonderful. Now I am just coming to my last part of the segment here. One is I just want a one-line comment from my panelist in terms of their topic. What does life at what does the new normal at life, at work, and at business mean to you, which our audience can take away? And post that, I will just add one line and pass it on to Kalairaj. We could start with any order. Probably we'll start with Vivek, sir. What is your one-line takeaway on the new normal at work?
For the new normal at work, my suggestion would be, my prayer to be, think differently.
Think differently.
And, think differently.
Lovely, lovely. So you've just got into 2 words. Beautifully done, sir. Vijayendran, sir?
I would say that be fearless in the actions that you take, because these actions, some of them are going to work, some of them are not going to work. But you can't continue with the yesterday's order to do your business today and hope to remain in business tomorrow. So you got to change. So I would say try things which are different. This is the best time to disrupt practices in the industry, embrace new methods, new practices, and be bold in embracing them.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Dr. Sandeep.
One word, actually, focus.
Okay. I mean, that's what a strategy man will always put it up. And wonderful for me, from my end to the whole audience here, transform now, change is good. It's always my take. And thank you so much, Kaleraj, for giving me an opportunity to share my perspectives, and also I think chair these wonderful gentlemen. I've always looked up to them at various points of time, not worked with a couple of them, but I think the last few weeks that I've been in touch with both Dr. Sandeep and Mr. Vivek has been quite humbling as an experience to me, and I really take this forward. Over to you, Kaleraj, for the finale.
Thank you, Prashant, and thank you, Mr. Vijayendran, Mr. Vivek, Mr. Sandeep, and beautifully orchestrated by Mr. Prashant. I think this is excellent session. I think we all exchanging a lot of discussion, and as I see that it is not the power of 4, the power of 100, because I've been seeing that the kind of questions which has been raised and which have been answered. So we given a kind of different perspective to the point what we are talking about, the theme we are talking about. Before we are moving into the theme or the presentation final papers for the day, I just want to add one point very clearly is the way new normal is also impacted in the market research also. Very interestingly, what happened is that we supposed to start couple of work in March, and then the all lockdown started. Then the all work have been halted. Then we have been forced to go on 3 major activities or 3 major changes in the market research as well. One is we're talking about the digitalization, which we have been taken into the same thing. We also done the digitalization. So we have done come to the online survey. We started a CATI, supported with the online survey being done, and we have done even 2-3 assignments in this time. That is the one thing which I've been just want to talk about that. Second is mystery audit, which has been usually happen in the FMCG. We started doing that mystery shopping and mystery consulting. This is the 2 things which we have been experiment for the couple of things. So this is actually another milestone which happened into the pharma industry, which we have experienced and real world warming things on that. Especially mystery shopping to the chemist shop, we will just go and talk to them as a customer. We see that what are the product available there, that is available. Especially there are certain company want to check their products are available right now in a couple of very key counters. So we made a check and we done and we submitted, and we also alarmed them. The couple of clients said, okay, now this is the product, you have to make it supply to them so that your product won't ride out. As Prashant was telling that because once the customer moved, then you want very difficult to get back to him on that. So this is a period, the kind of transition we should see that kind of supply chain is not interrupted on that. So this is been ensured that done that one. And third, very important concept, which is the very old concept in market research, which have been experimented now, is called marketing by research. Marketing by research is, say, I want to do the marketing, not go and talk to them directly. The way I think Mr. Vivek was telling that, if people go and talk to them to the MR, then doctors, what do they say is, the doctors say that, yeah, I've been hearing everything, right from morning to the, that I've been keep on hearing. Oh, you also coming and visual detailing to me. So it's really boring on that. So what we need to do is we have to allow the doctor to speak out. How do they speak out that the platform to do the research? Okay, so we enable them to make it to talk about that, and we ask the question such a way that we will also inform, communicate, and educate the doctors on that, what are the new brand, new positioning, or everything to them. So this is the kind of concept we have been trying couple of client on that. I think this is a kind of concept. So these are 3 things which have been doing that. I think now with that we will move on to our paper submission results. I first of all, thanks all participants, all the kind of people who have participated in the paper submission. I give a warm thanks and gratitude to them. And what we have done is we given a very brief about that. How did you meet your company and BU, our customer engagement platform, to manage and win over the current crisis? So there are a lot of things that we given the template also like this. The process we followed is we received the kind of paper, and we have done the selection criteria based on this six criteria: bonus and concept, how the concept has been given, how the content, what is the presentation flow, how the innovativeness in the paper, what kind of innovativeness is there, and how useful it this to the industry, and how it is overall have been given. So this is the way actually we have done. And so we have actually selected the papers, and the jury, all our panelists are the juries. So what actually we have done is that selected the one winner and followed by two appreciation award. Two papers been selected for the appreciation award. So let me just take opportunity and let's just join hands with me in applauding the teams. One, the Nitesh Kitta, Mr. Nitesh, who is the winner of this one. Let's clap for them. And then let us have really a kind of congrats to him, and the certificate will be moved to him. And I'm really and we want to really accommodate his paper, but because of the time and we will not be able to slot these papers.
Nitesh, can you put your video on so that people can see your face? Nitesh, if you can you just put your video on so that people can see you?
Is he online?
I think he could have.
Okay.
We will move on to that next. Yeah.
Next, okay.
Yeah. Nitesh, are you there, Nitesh?
I think he is.
Move on to that. Yeah, I think you could have just.
Okay.
Okay. Next, I think we have a two appreciation awards. There are two people who have been shortlisted for the appreciation awards. The next one is from the team of SIS students and the faculty. Snehal Singh, Shubham Roy, the students, and guided by Dr. Shalini Kulcha. I think they are some of them will be represented today. I think if you are there, kindly just put a video on, please. Hi, Shalini. Welcome, Shalini. I'm really congrats to you for your interesting the paper, and really we love to have this paper. Because of the shortage of time, we are not able to do that. So let's have congrats to you for the efforts, and and really, I think I take a special thanks to I take special thanks to Shalini ma'am for her, driving you guys to really bring out the paper, and it was really marvelous, and I appreciate you all guys, and the industry is waiting to welcome you guys. Okay. Okay, now let us take the next paper on that. We talk about the third, the next appreciation award goes to Mr. Pradipta Ghosh. And I think, I think Pradipta is there in, as really, we appreciate him for his paper, and really a kind of very well made it, the papers. Mr. Pradipta, are you there in the inside? I think I've seen you there in some time. Fine, I think probably the thing. So this is the announcements from our side. Now, before we moving into the next session, we validate session. So I once again, formally thanks everyone, and let us just go to the great thanks to all of you, Mr. Vijayendran, Mr. Vivek, Mr. Sandeep, Mr. Prashant. So these all, and I think Mr. Prashant, Mr. Sandeep, and Mr. Vivek are there with me in the earlier session also. So I'm going to disturb Mr. Vijayendran for the next session also, so that I can balance it. Okay. And I really take an opportunity to, thank all my speakers of this all webinars 1 to 10 or 11. We could say that Mr. Amitabha Gangopathyaya, Mr. Vikram, Mr. Sandeep, and Mr. Naresh Katara, Mr. Sangarlal, who is my friend, and also done a kind of very different session, and Mr. Vivek and Mr. Prashant, the lovely session, and Mr. Sangardas, we are missing Mr. Sangardas, and then there is Ashwini from in a non-pharma industry, and lovely Mr. ICS Verma. And take this opportunity also to thank Mr. Sandeep and Mr. Ramesh, who are actually, backbones of support to providing on this whole session. Thank you, Mr. Sandeep and Ramesh. And all paper submitted authors, I really take this opportunity to thank all authors, all delegates, all the participants of this, and the patrons, and all other continuous supports of that. And I like to our partners and associates, AVAX, we are partnering with you for the target cascading assignment. So AVAX and other associates, my field associates, who turn the project work within a week's time. We can give you a kind of project. So that lovely associates I have. So that is the people I want to thank right now this opportunity, and my industry patterns, my friends, and all my mentors currently. And also take this opportunity to thank the all people who keep me learning, prepped or keep my learning updated every time on the kind of basic fundamentals. My Nursing Institute, where I've been visiting faculty there, SIS, IES, CARE Business School, and all other management institutes. Once again, I give a very big thanks to all of you. Thank you very much, and I think we'll conclude the session. Thank you once for all.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we will.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and we will meet you. Come back with you kind of fresh season 2. Right? Say that with much more different changes in different the kind of structure will come with you. Thanks once again to everybody. Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kaleraj, on behalf of all the panelists.
Yes, Shalini. Thank you, Shalini.
Can I just speak for 1 minute?
Please, Shalini, you are welcome.
Okay, just to give a brief background, we are from the academia part of pharma industry, and I must say right from 11 o'clock, I've been there in the session. Vijayendran sir, Menon sir, Vivek sir, and Bhattacharya sir. I mean, there was so much of learning for me. So, I really look forward to, such kind of sessions. And Kaleraj sir, thank you so much for giving us this platform. And just wanted to say, there's a lot of learning for me as an academia, so I can understand how much learning it is there for, students. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you all the panelists for such an enriching session. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. Great.
Thanks, Kaleraj. Well done.
Yes, thank you. So with this, I think we'll conclude the session. Thanks all to all. Namaskar.
Bye.
And enjoy the holiday. And enjoy their food, enjoy your lunches.